All right. Happy. It's Wednesday night. Hope you guys are doing good. We're gonna run it down for a couple hours in the Q&A, like we normally do Mondays and Wednesdays. So before we get into that, big news over the last 48 hours here. We got the Bank of Japan increasing rates in Japan, quarter basis point, continuing to hike, which long term will be good for their economy, but in the short term is going to have some not so good effects that they're going to have to deal with. And, that kind of leads into what we've been talking about, and I don't want to say hoping for, but kind of hoping for digital assets. And then we had the Fed meeting today, where they did say that they plan to pivot the quarter point in September. So that's what the investment banks, said basically 100% that we were going to do a rate cut in September this year, and they called it. I was kind of hoping that they would go ahead and do that today, but they did not. And still bullish for the market. I think everybody prices in what they think is going to happen, right? So that's how markets work. They look at the future forecast and they price what they believe the future is going to look like into today. Everybody's always forward looking. So, when we get not so good news on jobs or whatever else, I would say it does impact markets, but not if it's what people thought was going to happen, then it doesn't move things. It means it's priced in. If it is different than what people anticipated, then you can see a move in markets. So basically just status quo today. The Fed came out and said that they are going to pivot and drop 25 basis points in September. The reason that is could be problematic. So if the Bank of Japan continues to hike rates, we have seen the yen actually increase in value to 150 from 160 to each US dollar. And if that continues to increase in value against the US dollar, it's going to mess up the reverse carry trade that's gone on for 20 plus years, where people will borrow the yen, they will buy US treasuries, and then basically, make the spread there, right? So I believe that interest rates now are going to be over 1% on the 10-year, which hasn't happened in a long time for treasuries in Japan. Obviously here in the US, those are, I think they're actually around 5%, maybe a little bit less than 5%. Short-term treasuries are a little bit further up here in the US, 5.5, closer to 6, which is inverted. It's inverted yield curve, and that's normally problematic, but it's persisting. So weird market dynamics. I don't think we'll ever see dynamics like this again in our lifetime. It's very unusual. I think things are about to get very weird here, and I think there are going to be problems with reverse carry trade, even with us holding and Japan hiking. It's going to continue to strengthen their currency against the US dollar, and people take a lot of leverage on those trades. And so, again, if it creeps below, 145 or above 145, it's kind of weird to talk about it that way. But if the yen increases in value in exchange against the US dollar, it's 145 yen to 1 US dollar, or 140 yen to 1 US dollar, I think that's when things start to really break over there in Japan. Could happen before that, but I think that's likely the snapping point. And that'll be the catalyst for the dominoes for a lot of the things we've been discussing. Still watching for a spike in oil. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back over there. We are looking at conflict in the Middle East again. If they shut down the Strait of Gibraltar, that's like textbook for what Jim Rickards talked about back in 2004. Or maybe it was, I don't know if it was 4 or 14. I think it was 2014 when he met with the Fed and basically told them, like, these are the things that could, should, would play out, and would cause, a knock-on effect of basically a change in the global reserve currency. And so I do think it will be oil that'll end up being the catalyst that pushes the yen into a position where they have to start unwinding the reverse carry trade. When that happens, they're going to be selling off U.S. Treasuries. I think that'll be the cue for the rest of the BRICS nations to start dumping them as well, kind of like Operation Sandman. A lot of people talk about that. And that becomes a very slippery slope for tier one collateral, which is U.S. Treasuries, if we don't shore that up and have enough demand here domestically to soak up those treasuries that are being dumped. And the way that they would do that is issue stablecoin regulation. Anybody that is an enterprise, institution, fintech, whatever you are, if you're going to issue a stablecoin, you're going to have a one-to-one backing with cash or cash equivalents. So, that shores up the treasury market, which is good. By proxy, that gives clarity to XRP and XLM as bridge currencies under that legislation that is currently sitting in Congress. And so you could see some pretty significant adoption of obviously stable coins being issued on those networks here domestically in the US. And then also those assets being used at scale to be able to settle transactions. The back end of the stock market, where they did move to T+1 back on, I believe it was May 28th of this year. And they do have the capability to settle real time, but they need clarity around the assets that would provide liquidity for those trades. And they need enough liquidity in those assets to be able to do it, which currently doesn't exist. So a lot of things, very close on the horizon here as we move into August. Shout out to all the Leos out there. I'm a Leo also. And so happy birthday for anybody else that has a birthday this next month. Should be a good time. So anyway, without further ado, we'll go ahead and hop into the questions here. I'm sure that you guys have burning questions and are always asking good ones like you do. And so without further ado, we'll jump into that. Anything's available. So mitigating taxes, estate planning, thoughts on the broader crypto market, macroeconomics, thoughts on specific coins. If I do have enough knowledge about it, I'm happy to answer. And then all, things XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, even, use cases for digital assets as well. All that is game. So, low yen, maybe that's how you say it. How do I go about setting up an entity in Dubai or the UAE? If I transfer XRP from personal to an entity or LLC, is that a taxable event? No. So two questions here. I'll answer the second one first. No, it is not taxable. You're transferring your basis and time held when you add assets to an entity via capital contribution. So you're basically exchanging those assets for the equity in the LLC, and therefore there's consideration that's passed, non-taxable event, doesn't have a step up in basis. Depending on what type of entity you move them into, it could lock or transfer the basis, and the only difference between those two things is your death. During your lifetime, the basis of those assets will be the same, but depending on how you structure the entity, your descendants or beneficiaries that inherit the LLC may get the step up in basis upon your death. So be aware of those things when you're making those transactions. I actually like locking the basis because I think it would, if I've educated the people that will get the assets, they will be aware of the capital gains implications that they will be stuck with or saddled with if they do liquidate them. And so I prefer them not to. So this is an incentive on my side by locking that basis to encourage them not to sell the assets and to figure out how to leverage them or use them to produce income. But other people feel differently about that. So you would contact somebody there in Dubai or the UAE. If you are in Australia, which, at this time of night here in the US, we do have some of our Aussie friends that hop on the chat. I do have a connection for you that can get visa over there in the UAE or Dubai in particular, and can help you set up entity there and be able to transfer your assets. So if that's something you're interested in, happy to make that connection. The old man of XRP, I love it. He says, love your insights. I was siloed with just XRP and then found you and solidified my decision. Thank you. Hey, I can't tell you what to do. I can just tell you where I'm positioned. I can tell you my thesis and why. Hopefully, you make your own financial decisions at the end of the day. But I think you'll do pretty well if that is your choice. Emily, she says, hey, Jake. Hey, man. What are your thoughts on BIS proposed banking regulations limiting Tier 2 crypto to 1% of their total Tier 1 capital? What would that affect potential price appreciation of XRP? I don't believe that XRP is going to be a Tier 2, geez, tongue twister, Tier 2 crypto asset. I believe that it'll be a Tier 1 asset in the banking system alongside treasuries and gold. And I don't think that it'll be designated a crypto. I think it'll be a bridge currency. And so with that separate, designation, I'm not really concerned about, what they've proposed here for the rest of digital assets. I think that that's reasonable, especially as they're kind of dipping into this space, making sure that things are okay and it's not going to be, cause systemic risk, which, I've talked about before already is, in my opinion. But yeah, that would be my answer there. I think that XRP in particular is going to be given a separate designation as a bridge currency and designated as Tier 1 collateral by the BIS after it does see price appreciation. Atlantic Living, hey, he says, do you know if Robbie Mitchnick off the board of Ripple was a positive departure? Did he leave on his own accord? I would wonder if the resistance for BlackRock's ETF XRP has anything to do with tension. It's an interesting narrative around that. He did leave on a positive note, from what I understand, to take that position over there at BlackRock as their head of digital assets. I'm going to speculate and put my tinfoil hat on. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. There was a fake ETF filing last year in November by BlackRock for an iShares XRP Trust ETF. And, the DOJ was going to investigate and figure out what's going on. But in order to be able to file that, the amount of notaries, the notarization that goes into that process, and the people that are like, the same people file it every single time, right? It's not like it was filed by somebody different. The people that have to sign that document in the presence of somebody else, like, okay, like if you could probably fake a different, like a Grayscale or like some other institution maybe, but not BlackRock. There's only ever been one other digital asset that did have a fake ETF filed, and both, I believe it was Grayscale, and that chain both came out same day, said it was fake, made sure that the market was aware that it was completely fake. In this instance, the only person that reported on it was Bloomberg. BlackRock never made an official statement. They retweeted the Bloomberg deal, so they have one arm's length away. They didn't ever actually say anything. And what they retweeted was the part where they said it was investigation by the DOJ. And then Ripple never made an official statement on it at all. And every time Larry Fink has been asked, and every time Brad Garlinghouse has been asked, both of them are like, can't talk about that, wink, wink. You know what I mean? So anyway, I don't think there's a problem there. I don't think that Robbie has beef with Ripple. I think that they're waiting for the right time to re-roll out that infrastructure and file an S1 and immediately fund that ETF without causing a knock-on effect. I think they want to be the only one when that's launched. And if you've seen, if people issue, that they're going to file for one, you have knock-on effects of other funds and institutions filing for an ETF along with them. BlackRock seems to be, I would say, in the first 3 or 4 people filing for things. They're not always the first, but they are in the top there. And I think it's going to be a sneak attack with the XRP ETF from BlackRock. Like I said, I think they already have the infrastructure set up for it. They have the trust. They've got everything in the background. that has been taken off Delaware's site. So I could be completely way off base here and crazy, just stating that. But with my tinfoil hat on, that's what I think. I think they're waiting for the right time to roll that out in front of everybody else and get ahead of the market. Robert says, seems like our beloved XRP is currently trying to decouple itself from Bitcoin and the rest of the market. Thoughts? It's definitely holding up better than it has in the past when we've had market corrections. I think that it's obviously been, well, I don't want to say it's obviously been, I feel as though it's been manipulated down over an extended period of time and held down to be able to trial it and make sure that it was going to work and hold things back until the time was right for appreciation to have it rolled out at scale. I think if they don't do it at the right time for the right instance, it may go up and come back down. My anticipation is that when it goes up and it's actually time for it to go up, it's not coming back down. And that's the other reason I'm siloed in it personally, because I don't think it's going to have the regression like a lot of the other digital assets in the market when it does see. I think it's just going to be a knock-on effect and like thing after thing after thing pushing liquidity into XRP. I think you're going to get a normal just bull run for it as breath opens up. You know, now that we have had the Fed say that they are going to hike or lower rates in September and relieve some tension off the valve, I think that's going to be bullish for the broader market. I think that breadth in the Russell is going to open up. I think that people are going to rotate from large caps into small cap stocks, which will have knock-on effects in the altcoin market. I think we're super poised for an altcoin run in general. I think XRP is going to lead that run. And as it's running, I think you're going to get catalyst after catalyst. So Japan, I think, will dump and implement their CBDC and settle through the XRPL. We need digital identity. We need a few other things to have like actual markets built on that public network or scalable on the public network and adopted by institutions. Actually haven't looked at the amendments in a while. Let me see where we're at on that, and I'll tell you guys. If you don't know where to go look for this stuff, it is xrpscan.com/amendments, and you can go check out, what amendments are up for vote, how many yays and nays on them. It doesn't look like things are moving too much. They've still got fixes and digital identity at 18. Things are slowly starting to creep up on the fixes, but digital identity really hasn't moved. So until those are rolled out on the mainnet, I think it's going to be difficult to see actual adoption by institutions. You need the digital identity component. Like I've harped on this before on some other videos, but I would say that is the most important amendment of 2024 if we get it this year, by far, above anything else, even more so than the AMMs, even more so than the Oracles. I heard Bob Way at the 2023 XRP Vegas say that the XRPL was the best network for identity. I deal with KYC, AML, OFAC, BIS, a bunch of stuff, compliance that we have to do for the RIA, for the family office, for other businesses that I operate. And I can tell you by far and above, just to be able to enter in a transaction with somebody else, that's the first thing you have to have. So if we have that native to the main network for the XRPL, that's huge for institutions. And it would set it apart from every other chain in that capacity. So anyway, rambling on here, but I do think that XRP is starting to decouple, and I think that'll continue, especially as breadth in the markets open up. Atlantic Living says, would you and Aaron G., I'm assuming you mean Aaron Grinhoss, he's our counterpart, partner up there in Canada, consider doing a monthly live stream together? Your discussion with him was incredibly beneficial. I'm glad. Topics: review tax responsibilities with profits, educate people with charts. Yeah, I would definitely have Aaron back on again and do another one with him. My time's really eaten up right now with a lot of the day-to-day stuff within the businesses. We're hiring, we're training, we're making sure people have the resources and the knowledge to be able to execute on a daily basis in the different things that we're building. hopefully within the next couple months here, that'll, it'll take a little less of my time as people step into their own, and things are stood up, and it won't require as much of my effort, which, that's just part of it. And I know those things. But at that point, I'd like to be able to step back and do a lot more of this. I get a lot of fulfillment from this, and it fills me up. Fulfillment. Other things take my energy. You got to put energy into things to get energy out. But yeah, I would love to do something with him and a lot of the other professionals that we have, that we're involved with at the family office level for the estate planning and to mitigate taxes. A lot of that stuff just doesn't get a whole lot of views, just honestly. People jump on and watch XRP videos. I try to be pretty balanced and calculated in the way I come to, the conclusions that I have and the conversations that I bring to you guys, which I think is refreshing. There's not a whole lot of other people. There's a lot of hype and there's a lot of doom and gloom. I don't try to do either one of those. I try to just come at it from a logical point of view and discuss facts and present things in a reasonable way. But yeah, if I can step back and I have a little bit more time, would love to do a podcast and have other great people like Aaron on a more frequent basis to be able to discuss those things and bring more value to you guys. And we actually were just talking about this earlier today. I think we're going to do some exclusive content specific for the mastermind in that capacity. And so, soft plug, Beyond Broke Mastermind. We have a lot of resources in there, but I think we're going to start to build out the breadth of that. I don't know that it's going to be this quarter, but try to push that Q4 of this year and definitely Q1 of next year. Velve 921 says, "What are your thoughts on keeping no money in the bank? And holding everything in XRP metals, cash at home? Do you think bank failures are that serious where people could lose everything in the bank?" I think it depends which bank. The FDIC is broke. They don't have enough to cover losses at this point. When they bailed out Silvergate and Silicon Valley Bank and a lot of the other ones that went under late last year, the regional banks that had problems, you saw that same weekend. A lot of other regional banks flew into Omaha, Nebraska, and got some money from Uncle Warren to make sure that they were well capitalized, so that if that happened again, that they would be okay. A lot of banks have a lot of unrealized losses right now that could be realized losses if they continue on the path that they are. But I think things are going to get shored up, especially as we get the implementation of these digital assets. If they're on the balance sheets of these banks and they do appreciate just from being used at scale, that's going to offset the liabilities and losses that they have. So I'm not overly concerned about that. I wouldn't. I know people that just hold Bitcoin. I'm going to meet with a guy tomorrow that just holds digital assets for the majority of his wealth. I don't blame him. I think that if you have the means to do so and the gumption to hold a large chunk of what you have in digital assets, I think that'll do really well. Metals, I talked about this before. I use that as my emergency fund. If you got 3 to 6 months worth of expenses in gold and silver, I think that's a good way to do it. It makes it a little more difficult for you to go get it and use it, right? So it's not just liquid cash in the bank, but you can take it to the coin store and swap it out for cash pretty much any time. And they're open on the weekends, So I would say have a relationship with a coin store that's close to you, if you are in the same position or use it the same way I do. Cash at home, cash in your mattress is just losing value. It's not like it was, in the 20s before 1971. Where it held its value because it was backed by gold. So, not saying to not be liquid with at least a portion of it. If you feel like I don't think banks are going anywhere. They're not going to. I'll just go ahead and say it. Could we see more bank failures? Sure. But if you're in large banks, like they're systemically important, they're not going anywhere. Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Goldman, Citi, they could all have problems, but they're not going under. Even and like I said, FDIC is not going to be what stops it. They're going to have to roll out digital assets if we do see bank failures to stand things back up. Well, this is good. David Baker, he says, hey, Jake, can you talk about some of the other services DAG offers after the LLC is formed? Yeah, so I've been very diligent to put together, and we do this with other clients already, a full suite of family office services. So you might say, well, what is a family office? What do they do? A family office manages their assets. Most family offices are north of 100 million. They are centimillionaires or billionaires, and they are in the business of making investments and managing their capital. That's their business. That's what they do. If you are less than centimillion, you would work with a service like ours, so a multifamily office, in order to be able to reduce cost. And we would provide all the services that you would think somebody that would have that amount of capital would need. So the estate planning services that can include, but is not limited to, trusts, insurance policies, setting up other business and structures and entities inside of trust or outside of trust or in foreign jurisdictions. Was on a call today with our Cook Islands contact, discussing trigger trusts and how we were going to work with that within the infrastructure that we have for custody for the digital assets. And there's that piece. And then we obviously provide the wealth management through Digital Wealth Partners. That is a registered RIA with the SEC. And we have custody, and we are able to provide yield for people on their digital assets and work with them to borrow against them or do other things there. Those custody accounts and the onboarding for that should be live next week is the plan. So excited for that service to actually be up and going. We have had a lot of people go ahead and sign up for that. If you are interested, you can just reach out to info@digitalwealthpartners.net, and we can have a conversation with you. Or you can, sign up for a consult through the site. Either way. Aside from that, we do have partners that'll do funds and foundations. So if you want to set up a hedge fund or private equity fund or an angel investment group or a syndicate of some kind, we can do all those things. If you're looking for philanthropic ventures, so if you want to set up a nonprofit of some kind, either a private foundation or a public charity, we can do all of that. We do provide accounting and CPA services through a lot of our partners here domestically in the U.S. and in foreign jurisdictions. Private security, concierge service, asset management for yachts, jets, real estate. We have brokers for all those things as well, domestic and foreign. Obviously, we source deals for our clients. If you're looking for an investment in a specific industry, we have partnerships for real estate, M&A transactions, boring businesses, like I talk about all the time. Private equity, obviously something else that we look at on a frequent basis. If you're looking for, early stage investment or later stage investment, we have brokers that'll source stuff on later stage. And then we also have, like I said, angel groups and other syndicates that we're a part of to be able to source stuff on earlier rounds. We do have our ear to the ground over in Silicon Valley with a lot of our contacts to look at, what's the next latest and greatest thing. A lot of stuff coming up in AI. We do have access to XAI through a partner to be able to get in on Elon's cap table for that deal. Anyway, so very wide breadth of stuff. As things, escalate, you do have more capital. Clients ask us for stuff and we figure it out. That's our job at the family office. I don't say no to things. I say, I don't know yet, and then go find a partner to be trustee services. That's something we recently added. We should sign the agreements or contracts for that tomorrow to be able to provide the trustee services, the distribution trustee and management trustee for all of our clients as well. So humming along, adding things to the scope every single day. And the LLC is just kind of the first step, right? Once you have that, then I didn't talk about all the insurance products, but again, that's part of the estate planning. So that gives you the widest variety of options on the other side of price appreciation to make sure that you're mitigating taxes and setting yourself up for success. And so that's why, that's normally our recommendation for most people. So great question. Hopefully that provides you a better insight into everything that we've already set up and currently do. Living Legacy reminds me, as usual, appreciate you, brother. If you do like this content, please share, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. It does help the algorithm, and hopefully help somebody else that wouldn't have seen this otherwise. Let's see here. Isolad, I like it. Rocket ships to the moon, brother. Hopefully, hopefully we get some good news about the case tomorrow. I'm hearing, we'll see. You never want to say anything or jinx it, but there are some rumblings that things I think are done. The judge should issue a ruling. Hopefully, we're here within the next 30 days. I'd be surprised if it got to September before she does come out and issue a ruling on the case. So we either get a ruling or we get a settlement. I'd prefer the ruling. I think that's also going to be a catalyst for XRP personally, and Ripple's potential public listing. If we did see, the SEC get their way on their last request, which was that the 1,700 pre-allocated contracts that have been redacted in the lawsuit become public, I think that people would be scrambling, falling over one another to get access to XRP on the exchanges. So. And when that happens, stay calm, breathe. Anytime you make emotional decisions, they tend to be poor. So I'll just say that we talked about this in the mastermind a lot. It's going to be difficult. I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do, but hopefully you have a plan in place. You have been proactive. You set yourself up in an LLC. You have a bank account where you can move capital to for however much you want to sell. You have an exchange account in the name of the LLC where you're able to execute a trade and be able to take profits if you want to, or you're in the process of working with us to be able to establish, your institutional custody and management of your assets to be able to reduce revenue for yourself and your family. So anyway, hopefully you have a plan. I think I've been diligent about, coming on here on a regular basis and speaking in other spaces and putting stuff out there so that people could at least be educated or start looking at a lot of this stuff before price appreciation over the last 2 years. But there's still going to be lots of people that get caught off guard. I think it's going to run much faster and much higher than people anticipate in the broader market. And with that, it's going to come very high emotions. So just manage those. Whatever your plan is, execute for you and your family, and breathe when it happens. Marie says, thanks for all you do. If you recall correctly, you were keeping an eye on oil as a catalyst for XRP movement. In what way would oil be a catalyst, and what would be the implication? It's a great question. So energy prices are always a catalyst for nations to strengthen their currencies because it's a benefit in those instances, right? So oil can act independent. It's not pegged. So if you had a catalyst outside the scope of what would be the normal oil supply. So if there was a constriction on oil supply, like I talked about, if the Strait of Gibraltar was blocked off, that's 1/3 of the world's oil supply that would be cut off overnight. And that would have huge price implications globally, not just in Japan, but here in the US, Russia, China, the UK, everywhere. And in that instance, it would be to the country's benefit to raise interest rates very quickly or strengthen their currency in some way in comparison to the US dollar, which is what oil is denominated in. Currently, we'll see, that's going to change. Obviously, we're in that transition period now, but still currently, global trade is denominated in dollars. So if your currency was strengthened in opposition to that, then you could stabilize the cost of energy there in your nation. So that's kind of what I think they would do. It would be of benefit to Japan to dump U.S. treasuries to strengthen their own currency in opposition to the dollar and be able to afford oil if it did start to spike in their currency and globally. And that would cause an unwinding of the carry trade and a lot of the stuff that I talked about just at the beginning of this live here. So, and then we would have the domino, right? But it all ends with implementation of stablecoin regulations here in the U.S., institutions being able to hold and use XRP at scale, be able to settle with it, and then push liquidity into it. The case settling, an ETF by BlackRock potentially being filed to funnel more liquidity in there. Tether also going down and reducing liquidity in the crypto market, and Bitcoin being sold off of their balance sheet to become compliant because they're a dollar-denominated stablecoin. It's just on and on and on and on. And all these things, I see them all set up, and they're just waiting on Japan and oil to knock over the first domino. So, and I don't think it'll take long. I think it'll be very quick escalation when everything rolls out. Cornell, they say, do you speculate Ripple? Well, same thing I was just talking about. Do you speculate Ripple's 1,700 NDAs are with? Who do I think they're with? Would you think the SEC is requesting a pile of XRP as part of the settlement? Thanks for all the comments. XRP has a fat stack of Doge and some other digital assets in their treasury. So it wouldn't surprise me if they did want, some XRP in consideration for the settlement. Most of their settlements are denominated in cash. So it's possible, unlikely. I would say unlikely that they ask for XRP from Ripple to settle the case. I think the U.S. government has one of those NDAs, or maybe more than one NDA of those 1,700. We can run down a list here. I think that Google, IBM, Amazon, Android, Tesla, almost every single large institution globally, the IMF, the BIS, maybe not the BIS, but the IMF for sure, global governments, JP Morgan, Bank of America, SoftBank, on and on and on. I think when that list gets disclosed of all those NDAs and the 1,700 pre-allocated contracts, like I said, I think it's going to be a mad dash. I think people are going to be like, oh my gosh, how did I not know that all of these large institutions and everybody is going to use this? But I think it'll be too late once all those get disclosed. There's so many smart people in the XRP community that do research and find things. There was one from Wrath Economan just the other day with Egypt, where they had originally had it on their website that they had partnered with Ripple, and now it's been removed. Robbie Mitchnick has removed his time from Ripple on his LinkedIn. Why would you be doing that if there wasn't? It doesn't make sense. You would just leave it, right? So you're trying to cover up something, trying to hide something, trying to make it not as obvious. But yeah, I think even McDonald's. And so this is the other thing. I think any multinational corporation, institution, anybody that's moving value in other currencies globally within their own infrastructure to pay employees or vendors or whatever else they have, Airbnb, what's the ride share, Uber. I think all of those people probably have a pre-allocated contract of XRP, because it benefits their business. If it's a bridge currency and they can swap currencies inside their own ecosystem to pay people much faster, they would remove the banks and the frictions and the extra cost and have more profitability for their business. So I think McDonald's will be on the list also. Kentucky Fried Chicken, all of it. JTank20 says, Jake, once Real USD is live, how many Ethereum developers do you see switching over to the XRPL? And also, have you done any AMMs yourself? So, two good questions here. Ethereum, Python, and Solidity in the EVM is by far the most developed on type of smart contract protocol, for sure. I think that if you had incentive to move over to the XRPL and the side chain there, you could see a big move. If Ethereum itself was labeled a security, and if there were implications for sending transactions on that network that would also designate your project as an immediate security, because it's proof of stake, pure proof of stake. I think that you would see people leap off of that network and go places where that's not the case. And everybody's kind of shifted to Solana over the last year and a half here, because of the latency and the fees. Well, what's better than Solana? A lot of the places we're already positioned, right? These developers just haven't figured it out yet. Solana's down frequently. Anytime Bitcoin and Ethereum have too many transactions on the network, the fees become unsustainable and the latency goes way up. So you need something that's scalable and fast and efficient to settle. The mainnet on the XRPL could currently scale to like 1,500 transactions per second. It's not enough. You need payment channels and what's the other? It's not distributed ledger technology. Anyway, there's a couple things that you need that are interoperable currently with the XRPL and the way that it works to be able to facilitate, a lot more payments. You need a subnet that was inherent or implicit or explicit to the mainnet to be able to scale to 30,000, 50,000, 60,000 transactions a second, which is really what's going to be required by Visa and MasterCard and a lot of the other stuff that I think ends up sending value over the network. We did talk to MasterCard earlier this year when I was in Dubai. Mentioned some of these things to them. I don't ever get direct answers. Just transparently, I never get a direct answer from people I'm talking to, but body language says a lot. So people go online and they speculate and they read these things, and that's great. I really applaud all the people that do the research and they pull stuff out and they find the connections between these things. But I really like looking somebody in the eyes when I ask them a question about XRP and seeing their visceral reaction. And if they, people can hide their emotions to some extent, but a lot of the time you can tell very quickly if there's something they're not saying. Is it good or bad? That's up for interpretation, obviously, based on the body language. But in almost all the circumstances that I have mentioned XRP or asked specific questions that have been skirted, I could tell that they had NDAs or something else in place that encumbered their ability to actually say what they wanted to. And it's always been like a smirk or a smile or like, okay, yeah. So anyway, I digress. But yeah, I think that there's definitely circumstance for the developers that have been building in Python and Solidity to move over to the XRPL and the EVM sidechain. And then to your second question here, you asked if I've used the AMMs. I've not. I've stayed away from them until we have pseudo accounts to be able to delegate the ownership or the liquidity into those pools to be able to circumvent impermanent loss of the asset itself. I don't think it's something that we'll participate in. Our number one rule at Digital Wealth Partners, and my rule also, is don't lose XRP. So we want to mitigate all downside risk as much as possible. And currently, there's just too much risk with the AMMs. The only people that I've seen make money with the AMMs are the people that are running them. If you spin up an AMM between two assets, your asset and somebody else, an XRP, or your asset and XRP, that person makes money, but everybody else seems to lose money when you put it into the pool. I'm actually going to meet with the gentleman that runs the largest AMM on the XRPL tomorrow for brunch. So I want to know what he's doing and what he's seeing, and I'll ask him because it's got more than $1 million of liquidity in his AMM. Soft plug, people put it in the chat here for me. But yeah, talk about a lot of this stuff and more there in the mastermind if that is something that you guys are interested in. This one's good. So can you please walk out the advantages, disadvantages of establishing my own single family office versus staying with DAG, and how would those two scenarios compare? This is a really good question. So it is my aspiration that everybody works with us actually ends up being their own single family office. Once you get north of $1 billion under management, you have the means to be able to do it yourself. Hopefully we can still play some role in that, but at the end of the day, I just want to empower people and give them the knowledge, the skills, the resources to be able to stand stuff up on their own. When I worked with people for physique coaching and nutrition and that side of things, I had a lot of coaches that wanted to keep all the secrets for themselves, and I would ask them questions and they'd be like, "'Cause I said so," or "It works," is their answer. And I'm like, well, but why? I want to understand why this works for me and why it couldn't work. Or I always wanted to understand the dynamics behind stuff. That's just how my mind works. And so that's what I try to share with other people. I want you to be able to fish. I don't want to have to hand you the fish all the time. I don't want you to rely on me for forever. But specifically on costs and other things, I would say that we will always offer a lower cost solution than running your own single family office. Is it sometimes worth it to run your own? Absolutely. All of the data systems and the other things that we're putting together, one of our main vendors, iPaladin, we work with them. Actually, I got a contract to sign with Jill. They have a proprietary blockchain that all of your contracts and all of your paperwork and everything that you have involved with your family office is issued on, and allows you to pass it back and forth between all of the professionals that work within your family office. Multi-factor authentication, super secure, a lot of accountability and efficiencies gained from using that system. And we offer that at a reduced cost every single year to our partners and the clients that we work with, versus going direct and having it on your own. So that's going to be the main benefit over the long term. Custody fees, working with our wealth managers versus other wealth managers that we provide are going to be just a lower cost at total because of the volume that we're doing. We're able to negotiate discounts with all of our vendors and partners. And as we in-house a lot of this stuff, there'll be cost reduction there as well. So that's the main benefit. We want to be a funnel for things also. So I'm building a lot of things out right now to be able to source deals at scale globally for any of the family offices that we are working with, either in a partial or full capacity. So anyway, we want to earn our keep is what I'm saying. We want people to want to work with us and provide a lot of value. But at some point, in the future, there will come time where people scale to a point where they have the resources, knowledge, and the want to just set up their own stuff. And we can migrate everything that we've put together for you over to your professionals that you hire underneath your family office. And, that again, that's kind of the hope for us. I don't want to be... I'm participating in this with everybody else, right? It's not like I don't have a pretty decent allocation to a lot of these things. And I'm doing this because I have a purpose. I get fulfillment from it. I get enjoyment from it. I want to help other people. But I don't want people to be dependent on me at the end of the day. I'm trying to build our businesses so that they're also not dependent on me at the end of the day. We've got a lot of sharp people working with us. That, if God forbid something happened to me tomorrow, I think I've cast a large enough vision and we have enough momentum and enough expertise and people at this point that it would probably continue without me. And so anyway, I'm rambling on here, but those are kind of the differences between, staying with us versus your own. The majority of it's cost, but there's going to be knock-on benefits of just the size of what this becomes that's going to be passed on to the people that are within the scope of working with us. So let's see here. Apron says, great stream. Tool from XDC said he is fueling the engine. Are you bullish on XDC? I'm bullish on trade finance for XDC. I think Atul and Ritesh are extremely intelligent. Been to their office in Dubai. We actually put on an event there earlier this year for the USA UAE Alliance. Went over there and talked to the VARA and a lot of the regulators in that jurisdiction. Hosted them there at the XDC office. I sponsored that, or our team sponsored that, and I spoke at that conference. Got to meet those guys in person. I don't see anything else in the long term being built on XDC aside from trade finance. I think that's, and I don't want to say they're siloed, but I think that's going to be the main things that are built on that network, and that's still going to be huge for the value of that token. I could see anywhere between a $1 and a $10 XDC, over the next 5 years, as they actually cement themselves as the leader in that industry. Andre Casterman has put together an ISO standard for all of the documentation that's required for trade finance, and in doing so, they're able to settle things real time and set up all the smart contracts associated with that. I think they need a little bit more liquidity in the token, right? But I think, again, as it gets adopted for that use case, that'll come. Comtech Gold, I've interviewed a bunch of people that are building on that network. I like XDC. Transparently, I don't own any. However, we are putting together some things through the mastermind group that would allow people to earn yield on their XDC. Probably, ideally, at the end of Q3 here, we'll actually have a way to be able to put your XDC to work and earn, somewhere between 4 and 7% interest on your XDC through the mastermind group. So, anyway, those are my 2 cents on it. That's definitely something I will probably purchase post XRP appreciation. CJ, he says, you're the best. Thank you for the kind words, brother. Will XRP become a tier 1 asset with stablecoin regulation? That's my bet. That's my thesis. I'll take it with a grain of salt. I don't know everything, but based on everything that I'm seeing, it can't be frozen. It can't be clawed back. You can't issue more of it. There's just a lot of things about it that lead me to believe that it's what large institutions and enterprises and governments want to hold, because they're not going to be beholden to anybody else if that's an asset that they're using for backing. So I think that lends itself to being a tier 1 asset for sure. Riskless is really the association for a tier 1 asset. Let's get on down here. Marsha, she says, this is off topic. That's okay. There's nothing off topic here, Marsha. You run it down. She says, but I hold some Casper, and someone posted it got hacked. When I went to uphold, it doesn't show anyone show up as one of my assets, and I can't buy it now. Have you heard anything additional? I have not. That is very interesting. It's something that I will have to look into. I don't know how you could hack that network. I mean, it is a public and private permission network. It is both. And that's why I was bullish on it. I think there's a lot of business use cases that Casper could be involved in at an enterprise level. But I haven't heard anything. But transparently, I haven't been able to really look up much over the last 2 weeks here. We've been wide open for everything else that we're doing. So I'll have to look into that. And if anybody else has any, insight there, would love to see it in the chat. If you have any links or anything else that you could post for Marsha. Let's see here. Scroll on down. Been through these. Sometimes it kicks me back to the top of the chat here. It's weird. Brian, hey brother. He says, finalizing my LLC. Awesome. Glad you're being proactive, man. Appreciate all that you and your team do for this group. Absolutely. Can't listen tonight, but looking forward to recap tomorrow on 1.5x. Well, you got your comment in here, and I appreciate you listening to it later on. Hopefully I'm not talking too fast for you right now. That's how I listen to my audibles, is on 1.25, 1.5. gets through them a little bit faster, and I can still retain the majority of it. Sometimes I have to listen back to some stuff. Vincent, he says, "How are you doing?" I am blessed and highly favored. Hope you're doing well, Vincent. How much of the Swift payment system will, I'm assuming you mean XRP, be able to take for themselves? Thanks again. So XRP and Ripple are two separate things. Ripple is a company that develops software that uses XRP and the XRPL to facilitate transactions and be able to charge for that software because it creates lower costs for banks and faster payments. How much of the Swift system will XRP get? I'll say it this way. And this is a quote from DAI. For you guys that don't know who DAI is, Digital Asset Investor. He's over in Georgia. I used to watch him daily for a long time when I first got into the space. Him and Brad Kimes, shout out to those guys. They've been OGs and continue to put out content for a long time. But anyway, in a conversation with him, he mentioned, somebody had told him that XRP would do one of two things, which is good either way. So it either gets 10% of the Swift's network, and that's really all it ever does, or it gets 100%, and if it gets 100%, it gets all the money, which is what Ripple's stated mission for XRP is they would like to move all of the money with that network and that asset. So if I had to guess how much of the Swift network business will XRP be able to take for themselves, it's kind of an odd way that you've listed it here, but I'm pretty confident that it ends up with all of Swift transactions. That's $5 trillion a day in volume that move over Swift. And I think I really think R3 is probably who ends up getting that, just personally. We'll see if that's the case or not. It definitely could be the mainnet of the XRPL and Ripple and their products. But I think one way or another, it does end up going through XRP. So if you had 5 trillion, you only had 5 billion XRP moving 5 trillion, you're at is that $100 X? No, it'd be $1,000 XRP. Unless you could use the same XRP 10 times a day, which Robbie Mitchnick's calendar, his calculator that he put together, does say that it can be used up to 10 times a day. So if that's the case, then you're looking at $100 XRP for 5 billion XRP moving $5 trillion on daily volume for Swift. Shirtflavor.com says I'm all in. I'm glad that you're here, brother. It's good to see you in the mastermind. Super cool to see great people in the mastermind come in there and get to see what it's about and enjoy it. Steve says Casper is halted. Wow, didn't know that. I didn't see that coming. I thought Casper was going to be pretty secure and not have that type of problem. So that's unfortunate to hear. Casper is apparently hacked and the network is down. So, dang, man, that is unfortunate. Well, I mean, again, just kind of goes to show you, the XRPL has never been down, ever, in the whole time it's existed. You've got Solana, you've got Casper, you've got almost every other network has had some type of problem at some point. So, bullish. DJ says, do you know where you find the top 5%, top 1% XRP owners, as it apparently changes every few months? It does. If you want to go to rich-list.info, and if you can't find that, you can go to Francis Bovine on Twitter. That's actually the gentleman that runs that site for the community. Shout out to him. If you guys don't follow him on Twitter, please do so. Support him. There was another gentleman that used to run that site off of his node and provide that information, and he shut it down. And Francis took it upon himself to set that whole thing back up. thank you to him. That's very relevant information for XRP holders. It's a nice, easy UI to look at that, and it calculates all those things for you. If you didn't have that, you would have to run a node in order to get access to the information to really spin up the spreadsheet and do that yourself. So again, shout out to him. If you don't follow him on Twitter, please do so. And it's rich-list.info is the website. Oh, see, here you go. Living Legacy right below that there in the chat. You guys are on top of it. Thanks to Living Legacy and Nurse. This is a public forum, but I just want to say thanks to all the mods, including both you guys in the mastermind, and for what you guys do here on the chat. I definitely don't say it enough. We have a really good community and really good moderators in there. Everybody there stays pretty upbeat and polices things well. Everybody's gets excited and emotions fly at some points, and there are conflicts, but I think you guys manage them pretty well, and it's much appreciated for what you guys do. David, again, says, breaking news, Open Eden has announced that it will bring tokenized U.S. Treasury bills, a short-term U.S. government debt obligation backed by U.S. Department of Treasury to the XRPL. Hey, very cool. This was something that was discussed at length when we were at Consensus this year. Tokenization of treasuries is kind of like, it's boring, but it's really kind of like the bedrock. The bond market and the debt market are really like the bedrock of the financial system. Everybody wants all the cool, sexy stuff. A lot of the borrowing and lending and, liquidity pools and DeFi and, but like tokenized money markets, tokenized annuities, tokenized treasury bills, I think that's going to be really what comes on chain first. And that's a lot of value. Like it's a lot of value. And that gives people a hedge, right? So if you did want to be able to earn interest, just like you are with stablecoins, move out of whatever, asset you're holding when there is volatility into something stable, hopefully with the volatility that's about to happen with Japan and everything, I think the treasury market will become stabilized again by stablecoin regulation. But it's cool to see the adoption of tokenized real world assets. I think that's going to continue to just be a bigger and bigger thing. And at some point, most people really aren't even going to realize what's going on. There's these protocols that exist that transmit data today. I don't know what they are. There's, HTML, HTTP, the email protocol. Like there's all these protocols that just operate in the background, but they make your life super easy. And they're basically what actually facilitates the internet. I think people are just going to be like, oh, cool. I can swap between, trade things faster and settle things faster. I can set up, smart contracts where I get paid faster. That's really going to be the reality of most people's thought process around what's going on here with the Internet of Value. And we have a family office conference later on this year, and that's really how I'm going to explain this whole space to family offices, because at its core level, like that's what this stuff does. And so you want to be investing in the protocols and the networks that are going to be moving that value and settling things, because the more value that's issued on those networks, the higher the price of the token, right? That has to move all of that and provide liquidity to those transactions. And I think once it's explained to people in that way, they're like, got it. Okay, so it's not just this magical internet money. It actually has a use case. It moves value from point A to point B and has to have enough value to actually support all of those transactions across a network. Yeah, like that makes sense. Supply and demand. Alfredo, hey, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, hola. Finalizing the LLC. Excited for the future. Thanks again. He says, hey, next summer we all need to do a yacht party and celebrate. I'm down. We, like I said, we have the concierge service. We were partnered with Ray over at Myria. If you guys haven't ever, I would go check it out. Their team is phenomenal. He's been on a few separate podcasts, and it's exclusive, difficult to get into. We're particular about who we recommend and work with him on. but they have access to anything and everything that you would want on concierge service. We also have. I did an interview with a gentleman not too long ago that'll charter yachts globally. He's the North American partner here, but we can definitely do that. We can get whatever size yacht you want when that time comes. We can do it in Greece. We can do it in Malta. We can do it, in the Gulf of Dubai, over there. Wherever you want it, we can get it done. And yeah, I think that it would be a great way to celebrate on the other side of this deal for all the people that have, I was talking to one of my teammates today about just dealing with hardship, and having to put up with things and be patient and invest over an extended period of time to get payback. Most people aren't willing to do that. And a lot of the people here, you've done that, right? Like you've taken the time, you've done the research, you've made your bet, and you've stuck with that for an extended period of time. There's obviously going to be people that are new here, and that's great. I'm glad that you found it before, price appreciation happens in digital assets. I got in 2020, and rode everything up. Should have sold more. All of us should. At least I sold some back in 2020. And anyway, I think it's going to be a wild ride, and just super blessed to be here with you guys. But your patience and the traits that you've built from this journey are going to lend itself really well to maintaining the wealth on the other side of it. There's going to be lots of people that are like lottery winners. The less time that you've been in the asset, the less prepared you are, the more mistakes you're going to make. And that's not always true. I'm sure that there are people that have held this for a really long time that'll still make mistakes. But if you have been diligent about preparing yourself to come into a good amount of wealth, educating yourself on a regular basis, partnering with the right people, I think that you're going to do really well on the other side of this. Marsha, thank you for the super chat. She says, character saying you rock while showing their pumped bicep. I was a bodybuilder. Maybe post moon we'll get back into that. Maybe we'll do another show and take you guys along for the ride, diet down, and they actually moved nationals here to Dallas now. Last year and this year they've had nationals here. It used to be in Miami. It was for a long time. But yeah, I think I could still qualify. I think I could get ready for a show and compete and qualify and do nationals here. So, if it comes down to it and we moon, I don't know, I'll probably be wide open through the end of the year. So maybe next year, if we moon, I'm not going to be able to be hangry with clients. So, Vincent says, I've had a property management LLC since 2018. That's awesome. Can I use this company to transfer my XRP? I would not. And this is the reason why. So you want to silo risk. That's the whole point of an LLC, a limited liability company. Anything to do with real estate, especially property management, there could definitely be lawsuits against that company, depending on what you're doing on a regular basis and what properties you're managing. I would silo your investments in digital assets in a separate LLC from anything that you're doing with real estate or anything else that could be a potential liability for lawsuit. So that's the whole point, right? Like you want to silo that risk and liability or potential lawsuit to just that business away from the rest of your estate, so that if there is one, they're not going to be able to, come after those other assets that you have. Obviously, if they pierce the veil and you don't have your operating agreement in place and you don't have everything buttoned up like you need to, they can come after you personally. And if they come after you personally, they can go after other assets that may be siloed in other LLCs where you're the only member on the cap table. So it's always good to have minority interest by somebody else on the cap table. Wives normally or spouses don't normally count. Children, brother, sister, close friend, business partner, All those things are good to have, especially if they're on bank accounts. It makes it difficult for anybody else to come after and freeze assets if they are going to come after you personally. They can only come after your interest in the company. So that's where trusts come into play also. If you do have the assets in a trust, they're going to be secured from probate and creditors, especially if that trust has been seasoned. The sooner you set up an asset protection trust, the better, because it takes about 2 years to season that trust and make sure that if it does provide the asset protection that you're going to want if somebody does come after you, right? If they figure out you have money. So all these things, they matter. Timing matters. The sooner you set up the LLC, the more credit history and tenure it's going to have. If you spin up an LLC and the next week you get a bank account and you dump $1 million in it from a crypto exchange, it's probably going to get flagged. Just being honest with you, unless you have a relationship with that bank. Like, you should be running, some transactions through the account, probably doing a certain amount of business, holding some type of capital there, maybe paying a bill out of it. Like, they just want to see transaction history on an account before it's whacked with, a big lump sum. They're still going to have questions. Where did this come from? We need to know where the money, You're going to have to answer those questions. That stuff's not going to go away. But if you've been proactive, if you have tenure on your accounts, if things are set up correctly, then you're going to be a lot better off than if you're just rushing into it post price appreciation. J Tank says, Jake, do you think this will be the last 4-year cycle we ever see in crypto? Chart guy out of the chart guy's out of business. I think it's quite possible that this is the last cyclical bull run for XRP in particular, and some of the other utility assets. Everything always happens on cycles. It's not like cycles are going to go away on the other side of this. I think constraints are going to change drastically, but I still think we're going to be on another 100-year cycle for a currency system. And then if I'm still around somehow, that's why I say I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. But 100 years from now, I think that there could be another revolution in the way value moves and another currency system that's set up. But until then, I think, whatever is established within the next 3 to 5 years here is actually probably going to stand the test of time for that period. So could we have like one more cycle on the other side of this? I really think once regulations are in place, and then you have, adoption of these networks, I think the cyclical nature of this market and then also, like, if there's 10 trillion, 20 trillion, 100 trillion, a quintillion dollars worth of value in these networks, the higher the price of these networks or the tokens or the liquidity that's in them, the more stable they're going to become. The fluctuations and the volatility will go away. So, and specifically what you're asking here is based around volatility, right? So the run up and the drawdown of these assets, I would say it's my estimation that yes, this is the last 4-year cycle where constraints that have existed over the past 15 years are maintained, and moving forward, there will be other constraints that cause differences in how this market works. Charting guys will never go out of business. I think that there will always be something to chart. I do think that the FX market probably becomes a lot more stable with asset-backed stablecoins and pegs for gold and oil. A lot of the way that people leverage money and assets right now and credit is going to change on the other side of this. And you just need to be prepared for that, right? Like, people have figured out this debt-based system. They're like, draw down the debt. We've seen this huge escalation in debt the last 10 years, really over since 2000. Like, there's just been an almost parabolic move in debt. People have figured it out. They see, especially the smart people, the wealthy people, have figured out draw down debt and then just refinance things over and over again while interest rates were dropping. It's not the game anymore, right? The interest rates have risen. And I do think that they'll probably be maintained somewhere around here. You need a 5 or 6% interest rate to really maintain a healthy economy, but you also want economic growth, real economic growth, to be able to sustain that and not have to pull levers and use the magic man behind the curtain to get any type of ROI or real ROI in an economy. So anyway, I get on my rants, but yeah, I think this is the last one. Ms. Sanchez, she says, how soon could we start getting yield off our XRP? Also, if we custody our assets or crypto with you guys, is it still ours? That's a good question. Because once you said Caleb and Brown own your assets, once you let them custody it. Yeah, so you still sign all the transactions with us. You still are in control. If there's anything that you can kind of set the constraints with us is really what it comes down to. So we're countersigner. It's a multi-sig system. It always requires your signature if you want it to. If you want us to have access up to a certain amount, you can make it that way. If you want full control and lock it down and you to be the first signature on everything, you can do it that way. It's really customizable for what you want and how you want to manage your assets. We don't have the keys. The custodian doesn't have the keys. The keys are the way we sign. So you'll have, a physical device, a biometric, and a password that's used to sign something. And then that'll be sent off for audit along with us. And then your trustee, if you have a trustee on the account, or your spouse, depending on how many signatories you need for each transaction. And there's still your keys, your crypto. You get to decide how things are done. We just, provide the partnerships and partner with you to be able to earn yield and provide you solutions, to be able to borrow, lend, earn, all that stuff. To be able to earn a yield off the XRP, we have partnerships now where we can put it to work and earn a yield. We're finalizing those agreements with an institutional partner. We should be able to launch that within 30 days of being able to onboard clients, hopefully even sooner than that, as long as things go the way that I would like it to. I'm trying to hedge my bets, but we've made this, the way I've tried to orchestrate this is how would I want to be treated as a client. I don't like losing my keys. I don't want to give over control to somebody else. I want to have a bankruptcy remote account. I want my assets segregated away from everybody else's. I want my accounts insured. I want my beneficiaries on my account. I want my spouse on my account if something happens to me. I want to make sure that the other counterparties probably aren't related to me in any way or going to be in the same vehicle or on the same plane or God forbid something happens in that capacity. But there's somebody else there to make sure that they can honor the things that I wanted if something happens to me. So anyway, we've done our best to set this up in a way that's the best of both worlds is really what it comes down to. And you absolutely still own your assets. We just act as a manager for you in that capacity. So, and provide the benefits that we can provide. Mr. Nobody, he says, do you run with, and is it sensitive on the new hairline? I do not run. I'm built for comfort, not for speed. I walk at a brisk pace for my cardio, or I do the stairs. And actually, cardiovascular activity where your heart rate is north of maybe 145, 150 beats per second, you actually end up metabolizing carbohydrate much more than you do fat. So you want to be 70 to 75% of your VO2 max at a maximum. If you're good at metabolizing fat, you can still metabolize fat there. Most people are really between 60 and 65% of your VO2 max and heart rate that you would want to be exercising at to be able to metabolize fat over carbohydrate. I went way off the rails with this question. My hairline's fine. Thank you, though. It is, I've got the aftershock thing going on where the hair falls out. So it's like the ugly duckling phase. It looks worse before it looks better is what I'm thinking. So hopefully it kicks back in, but it should have a good hairline again. Raj, hey Raj, if you're the Raj I think you are, how are you, sir? Having all your XRP in one single wallet is a risk, and how best way to mitigate that? Yeah, so that's why we have two separate custodians, right? So even though I don't think that there's any risk associated with what we're providing, it's still good to mitigate risk as much as you possibly can. So I do hold a small portion of XRP outside the custodians, just transparently. And then I would divide my XRP across the two separate custodians that we have if possible, right? And that's the other reason, we've set up accounts with multiple custodians that do hold XRP. So we have Anchorage and we have Archax. As far as I'm aware, we're the only wealth manager globally that has two separate custody accounts and works with two separate custodians for our clients, to actually be able to provide a way to de-risk and hold XRP in multiple accounts. Same thing with other assets, right? So Archax provides a much larger scope of assets that they can custody. They have HBAR, XLM, Algorand, and they're actually a portion of their custody solution is interoperable with Fireblocks, or is built out on Fireblocks. So they can add other assets much easier than a lot of the other custodians that we're partnered with. And then they also obviously are with Ripple and Medico, or Mataco, however you want to say it. Ripple is what it's been rebranded to. So that's there. And then Archax they're really the leader for wealth managers and RIAs. They're much further down that road than any of the other custodians we've talked to. Their UI and the integrations with the TAMP on-ramp that we're working with, and the other institutional partners for fund management, accounting, billing, like all the other stuff that you need. Archax is pretty much already set up, or not Archax, Anchorage is pretty much already set up. We're the first wealth manager for Archax to bring on. So anyway, it does cost to have multiple vaults. There are setup fees for each one. If we could mitigate that, we would. I think we're going to try to do something where we can reduce costs. If you do two, maybe there's some type of discount that we can run. We have hard costs that we have to honor with each custodian. So anyway, really good point here. And I just wanted to make sure that we stated that we do have the capability to diversify across multiple custodians for our clients. J Tank, again, with the good questions. He says, I have a Coinbase debit card. Very cool. Can spend my crypto off of it. And I heard Uphold is releasing their card soon. What do you think of those cards, and is it wise? So we talked to MasterCard earlier this year, and that is one thing that I think it would be cool to offer clients for us, is have their assets held in institutional custody in a siloed, segregated account that's not commingled and insured, and then have the capability to spend them if they so chose. That's probably like a Q2, Q3 next year type product that we may bring to market. I don't necessarily want to spend my crypto. I'd like to borrow against it on a credit line and have a credit line that's on a card, right? So that's probably how we'll orchestrate that for our clients. It'd be like a black card. It'll be a MasterCard, American, Digital Ascension Group card. Make a metal one where maybe it'll be gold. I don't know. We'll do something cool. And people be able to spend their credit line against their crypto. Just however much you want to run up. And we'll make it a reasonable interest rate. I'm not going to make it like American Express or any of those. I think that's crazy. Some of the interest rate that they charge on credit cards. I'd like to get lines of credit for our clients at like, prime plus 1 or 2. I think that would be reasonable, especially if it's a tier 1 asset in the banking system. I don't see why that wouldn't be a possibility. So anyway, definitely something on my mind. I do think it's cool, but I personally don't spend my crypto. I spend stablecoins. Like if you want to hold USDC there and spend your USDC on your card and get like cash back in XRP through Uphold, yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it. But if you're going to spend your XRP or whatever else, I I know you can get your deposits to Coinbase too. They have their money transmitter licenses. So anyway, this one's good. Brandon, I can tell you have a seasoned barber. That hairline's going to look good in 6 months. Thank you. Appreciate your kind words. I've had many customers go to Turkey for the same treatment. Always drops out a month, and then so give it 6 months. Very cool. Okay, thank you for the reaffirming that, Brennan. It's he says he's a seasoned barber. Very good. We have a little small town barber here in my area. Actually just booked with them for me and my son another day this week. So we'll go see them, and they'll get to tell me if I'm the only guy in my little town that's ever had it done. We'll see. I'm gonna go get a fade. Don't worry. Like, I feel like I've got like the Homer Simpson look going on. It's kind of losing up here and it's like big on the side. So I'll get my ears lowered here in a few days. On the next live, by then I'll have had a haircut. So anyway, we are about an hour and a half in here. I've had a lot of good questions tonight. Rob X, I normally don't entertain these, but I'll run it down for you here. He says, I have 123,000 XRP. Is that a decent bag? Don't dox yourself, and don't tell people how much you have. I'm hoping that this is kind of a joke here, just because it's 123, but maybe not. I probably have a little bit different perspective on this than most people. So we have a lot of people reach out to us and work with us and disclose, obviously, the amounts of XRP that they have, because it's pertinent to the conversation and the information we're providing them. Obviously, all that's confidential. We hold it in high regard, and we do not share that with other people. You can look at the rich list. That's kind of the generic answer I always give, but I'll actually run this down for you guys, just based on my personal experience here. So if y'all want the real deal, I'm just going to speak to like the median amount of XRP and the mean or the average amount of XRP that we have conversations with people about. Okay. And so I don't know if that means it's a decent bag, if it's a good bag or bad bag. Those are decisions you get to put the label on it. I'm just going to tell you facts and numbers. Okay. So I would say on average, across everybody that we talk to, and we probably have a different demographic that reaches out to us that maybe has a bit more, right? They believe it's going to appreciate, and there is a reason to be proactive. So we're probably just talking to people that have a bit more. So take it with a grain of salt. I would say the average person that reaches out to us probably has at least 6 figures in XRP. Now, that's not to say we don't work with people that have less than that. I've had conversations with people that have 10,000 XRP. I think that we can provide the most value for people once they have at least six figures worth of XRP. And so that's 100,000 XRP or more. I think at that point, our services and what we do and the information that we provide has a lot more value for somebody that has that amount versus somebody that may have less. Because really what I end up telling them is, don't know that you need anything that we need. We can sell you right now. To be honest with you, if I were you, I would just keep buying more assets and spend my money there instead of on, all of the other things that we offer. The stuff that we do, we're looking to mitigate tax implications for people that are going to have a significant liquidity event or want to sell a significant portion of their assets. If you're selling, potentially $250,000, $500,000, $1 million worth of your assets, that's when we really start to provide some value for people, and setting things up now and being proactive makes a lot of sense. If you plan to hold in perpetuity, or you have less than 6 figures invested, or maybe $80,000, well, it's probably 6 figures now with the price appreciation. If you have less than 6 figures invested, I don't know that we provide just a ton of value for those people. And it's not to say that they won't have significant appreciation and have millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars later on, or even $1 billion later on as the asset continues to appreciate. I just think it's a little bit further out for them than somebody that has a bit more now. And then I would say the median, like if we actually had my business partner Max sent me a picture the other day. We had 589 forms filled out on Digital Ascension Group like 2 days ago. So that was cool. But across the 600 plus people that we've had conversations with, I would say like middle of the road. And again, average and middle of the road are two different. So mean would actually be like if you laid all the numbers out across the chart, what the actual middle number was versus, that's mode. I'm sorry. Mode is that. And then mean is the average, like if you took everything and averaged it together. So I would say the average is probably a bit north, probably close to the number that you've provided here, maybe like 120, 130,000 XRP. And then if you laid them all out, it would probably be a little bit less than that, maybe closer to the 100,000 mark would be, well, I say that. Yeah, probably closer to the 100,000 mark. And now, obviously, we've had conversations with people that have a lot, what I would consider a lot. 8 figures plus would be a lot, in my opinion. That'd be on the high end of most people that we've spoken to. So kind of run the gambit there. But and again, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm just providing you with my experience and having conversations with people. There are people out there that are super blessed and have taken advantage of this opportunity, and especially with the lawsuit, use that time to accumulate a very decent bag of XRP. And, I don't think you should ever invest more than you're willing to lose into something. Kind of required to say that. I'm not a financial advisor, but those that bet big win big. I'll say that too. You don't go and win, millions of dollars at the casino without betting pretty big. If you're in the high roller side, you're rolling $100 to spin. You're a lot more likely to win $100,000 or $50,000 or $1 million than you are playing the penny slots. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying to risk it. I think that this is a way that a lot of people can make an educated bet. If you are, doing the research and you understand what you're investing in. But yeah, hopefully this gives you some insight. Like I said, I normally just give the generic answer of go look at the rich list and that'll tell you what a decent bag is. But I figured I'd share, kind of the demographic that we speak to on a regular basis and where they sit in comparison to, maybe the perception of most people. So hopefully that's valuable. Going down to the bottom here. Shirtflavor.com says, I think Ripple is the next $1 trillion company. I don't know if they're the next $1 trillion company, but I would say that they will be a $1 trillion plus company. I think that they are the Amazon of digital assets, and they're a really strong horse in the race for potentially the next $1 trillion. My prediction is Ripple will be the highest public offering of any stock on any market when they go public. And I don't think they will be an IPO. I think they will be a direct listing, which a lot of people conflate the two. But I want to be specific here because I want you guys to be educated and understand these terms. Direct listing, they don't dilute their stock. They're not going to do the roadshow with the investment banks and pass stuff out and mess up potential returns for their shareholders. The shareholders that exist now will be the ones selling onto the public market at the open the day that it goes public. In my opinion, I don't think that there will be a lockup period like you normally would have in an IPO, where the private people that were holding the private stock kind of get second pick to the investment banks. I think Ripple's does a really good job of providing their shareholders value, and they'll continue to do that even when they go public. But I do think that they will be the highest at direct listing or public listing. Saudi Aramco had an IPO at $59 billion in value. I think Ripple will go public at around $100 billion in value, and then we'll continue to appreciate from there over the long term, hoping they pay a dividend, an investor too. And on that topic, in the mastermind, we do run private investment deals. Can't say what company or who we're investing in or any of that here on a public forum. But if that is something you're interested in and would like to learn more, you can join the mastermind. It's something that we talk about every single week there on Mondays and Saturdays. Teresa, he says, I'm late to the party. Not sure if you spoke about the war heating up after the assassination in Israel. Yeah, I've been talking about oil being a catalyst for a while, and conflict there in the Middle East aligns with that. I think that that could have some significant implications for the price of oil, and that's what I'm looking for to be the domino that pushes Japan kind of over the edge and starts to unwind the reverse carry trade. So great topic of discussion, and I do appreciate you bringing it up. Vincent, again, I don't think it'll be an IPO. I think it'll be a direct listing, which is a public offering, but not a traditional IPO. Ripple, XRP is not a security of Ripple. So I think that XRP will already be on a very strong trajectory. And so again, like here's a timeline on this. Let's say we do get a settlement. Let's say we get a settlement tomorrow, or a ruling from the judge tomorrow. Okay. They're going to have to file the S1 with the SEC. The SEC has to approve it. Once they approve it, it's still going to be like the fastest they could get to market to actually IPO would be another 25 days after that. Because there's a lot of things that have to go on the back end to be able to get ready for that and actually have a public listing. So I think XRP will be well on its way with price appreciation, and that it'll have significant upside before public listing actually happens. I don't think that Ripple's direct listing will play into the price appreciation of XRP. I think that utility and adoption and institutional use of XRP at that point will be what's driving price, completely separate of anything Ripple is doing. Just my 2 cents. I could be wrong, could be the other way around, and what you said here could be the exact reason that it appreciates, but that's not my thesis. Last one before we go this evening, shirtflavor.com says, do you think any of those 1,700 NDA contracts will become public after the ruling? I also don't believe in an appeal. I think that they will be part of the ruling. I think that the judge will grant the SEC's request that all of those 1,700 become public information. And I think that that's also going to be one of the things that drives pandemonium and euphoria in XRP in particular. People like fumbling over themselves to buy it off of the exchanges. And I think that'll come at a time when liquidity is drying up. There's implications from Tether being sanctioned. And I think the exchanges themselves will be buying up the XRP to provide liquidity to their own ecosystems. So it's a perfect storm for the craziest price appreciation on the asset you've ever seen. So anyway, we'll go ahead and end it with that tonight. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me and asking great questions. As always, if you do want to learn more, go check out mastermind.beyondbroke.com. If you do want to meet with me or my team to discuss estate planning, tax mitigation, filing your crypto taxes, anything to do with wealth management, just go check out info or email info@digitalfamilyoffice.com, or you can go book a time at digitalwealthpartners.net. With that, we'll wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful night, and we will see you guys